Excellent. Boker Tov. Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us. And of course, thank you to Mordechai and Raya for hosting this wonderful shir on Pirkei Avot. Today's subject is a very, very fundamental concept that we're going to try to discuss. It's going to be the main focus of today's shir. And that is the subject that Am Yisroel is dealing with different concepts. And we're going to try to see if we can work this out and to see if we can bring some clarification. On one hand, we know that Hashem created all human beings, not only Am Yisroel. Everyone, all are part of Hashem's creations. We respect everyone. There are many sources in Chazal and our sages that is so. On the other hand, we know that when we received the Torah, we became the chosen nation. And if we're the chosen nation, some may view us as being racists, God forbid, as if to say that we're putting other people down, other nations down. And obviously it's not true. That is not the fact at all. So how do we balance between these two seemingly opposite concepts of respecting everyone and still remaining the chosen nation of Hashem? Before we get into the subject, I would like to learn one Mishna. We're up to Perek Shlishi Mishna Yud Gimel, the third chapter of Pirkei Avot, the 13th Mishnah about Rabbi Akiva. And then we'll go into Mishnah 14, which is the main subject for today. Mishnah Yud Gimel. Rabbi Akiva Omer, Rabbi Akiva says, Sachok, the kalut rosh, laughter and lightheadedness, margilin et ha'adam la'erva, they get a person into the habit of doing immoral things. Masoret, going along the tradition of Am Yisroel, siyag la Torah, is like a fence which brings us closer to Torah. In other words, some people may say, oh, that's only a custom. I can't stand when people say that. What do you mean it's only a custom? Of course, literally, when we're talking about halacha, then halacha comes first. But when it comes to masoret, a custom, which is a tradition, it may not be halacha per se. It may not be halacha per se, but it's definitely very important because it's the tradition and it's the customs which keeps the Torah going. Masrot siag lo osher. Masrot, when someone gives maaser, which is a tithe of their earnings, siag, riches. Nidarim, when someone makes a promise, in other words, you make a promise in a way that I am going to be extra careful in a certain mitzvah. Usually we have to be careful not to promise. Because if someone, God forbid, violates the promise, then they violate a mitzvah. But if a person is able to be careful enough in their promises, then siyag la prishut, that brings forth that a person will be separated from worldly matters and more connected to Hashem. And here comes the famous line, siyag la chokhmah shtika, a fence, something that will bring someone closer to wisdom, shtika, being quiet. Shtika, when a person is quiet, then it brings us closer to wisdom. I like to say often that when a person, what the WhatsApps are a blessing, I think, for humanity, because you see a person's wisdom and the opposite thereof, and how a person communicates in their in their how they speak, how they write, how they express themselves. And b'chachma, you want to be smart, you want to be wise. The best thing for wisdom is shtika, to be quiet. If a person, for example, gets upset, and they right away, like with a knee-jerk reaction, they respond and they yell back and they answer, it's usually not going to be a healthy response. They say if a person receives a nasty email, don't respond right away. You can write it, but don't send it yet. Write it, and then the next morning, after you've slept over it and you've calmed down, then reread the email that you prepared. There's a very good chance that you're going to change a number of the words, a number of some of the text of the email, because shtika, being quiet, shtika, that is a special bracha for wisdom. You're not going to regret if you were quiet. You can always say afterwards, you can always write afterwards what you wanted to originally. So definitely, when a person is quiet, then you know that you're going in the right direction. Okay. Just one moment. Okay, let's jump right into Mishna. Just one moment, please. One little point before we move on to Mishnah Yudalit. One of the items that we mentioned over here in this list, the Rabbi Akiva says, is nidarim siag la-prishut. When someone promises to do a mitzvah or not to do a sin, it helps a person separate from the materialism of the world. So the question the Rabbi asks is that usually we know that you should not do promises. Whatever the Torah says that you should stay away from, that is enough. And we don't have to bring upon ourselves more dvarim asurim. Dayach masha asra Torah. It's enough with the Torah. And so why do we say over here that a person should bring on themselves, so to speak, more nidarim, more things that are not permitted in order to keep them away from the way the world, things which are not according to Torah. And so the Rebbe explains that these are two different levels in the service of Hashem. When the Talmud tells us that it's enough what the Torah said, and we do not have to bring upon ourselves more Dvarim Asurim, more promises, that's by a person who's already on a high level, and he follows the way of the Torah. But our Mishnah is trying to help a person who still is on a low level and needs to be uplifted. How can you uplift yourself? What is a good tool that you can use to lift yourself up to a higher level of learning Torah and connection to Hashem, and to stay away from things which are not allowed to be involved in? Through making nidarim, through making promises. Let's go right to Mishnah Yudalit. It's also from Rabbi Akiva, because it says, Hu haya omer. He used to say. Chaviv adam shenivra. Now we're going to get to the subject of racism and the opposite of that. Chaviv adam shenivra b'tzelem. A person is beloved, that he was created in the image of God. And many of the commentaries say over here that Adam means all mankind, not only Am Yisroel, obviously. Every single human being was created in the image of God. This expresses an extra level of chiba, an extra level of love and affection for the human being. Shenivra b'tzelem, because he was created in the image of Hashem. Shenemar, as it says in the first parsha of the Torah, Ki b'tzelem Elokim asata Adam. For Hashem made man b'tzelem Elokim, with the image of God. And the Rebbe indicates something very interesting over here, that when it says Ha'adam, the man, it refers to every single human being, including Gentiles. When it says in our sages just the word Adam, then it means Am Yisrael. If it says Ha'adam, the extra hey in the beginning means the. In Hebrew, the hey before the word means the. Ha'adam, the man, means every human being, including Gentiles. That's point number one of this Mishnah. There are two more points. Now we move on to Am Yisrael. Chaviv in Yisrael, Am Yisrael is beloved. Shenikru banim lamakom, for they are called children for Hashem. Chiba yitera nodat lahem. There is an extra special level of affection and love which is known for them. Shenikru banim lamakom, because we are called children of Hashem. Shene'amar, as it says in the verse, we read it a few weeks ago in the Torah, about a month ago. Banim atem l'Hashem Elokechem. You are children for Hashem your God. So over here we see that in middle of Mishnah Yudalid, the Am Yisrael should feel fortunate. Wow, we are Hashem's children. That is a great zechut, a great honor. Now comes phase number 3 of Mishnah Yudalid. Chaviv in Yisrael, Am Yisrael are beloved. Shenitan lahem kli chemda. There was a precious vessel that has been given to them, to us. Chiba yitera, an extra special level of love, nodat lahem, has been known to them. Shenitan lahem kli chemda, that we found out that we were given a beautiful kli, a beautiful vessel. Shene'amar, as it says in the verse, Ki lekach tov natati lachem, for I have given you a good acquirement. Lekach is also like something that we can eat, something that was acquired. Torati al ta'azovu. Don't leave my Torah. Hashem says, my Torah is your acquiring. You've acquired the Torah, and you've acquired me through the Torah. Like the Alter Rebbe explains in Tanya in chapter 5, that when a person learns Torah, you grasp Hashem. There's no other way for us to grasp Hashem. Hashem is the infinite, the Ein Sof. So, Torati al ta'azovu. Do not leave my Torah. So, what we really need to understand over here is how to balance the two different focuses of this Mishnah. One, the focus on all mankind, including the world, and the uniqueness of Am Yisrael, that we are the chosen nation. So, first of all, we know that in the first parsha of the Torah, Hashem created us in the image of God, which we just said in the Mishnah. We know that just before Am Yisrael crossed the Yam Suf, after we came out of Mitzrayim, the angel said to Hashem, we object the fact that only Am Yisrael should go through the Yam Suf, and the Mitzrayim, the Egyptians, should not. We don't agree that they should drown in the Yam Suf. Like, for example, Hashem said, the Medrash teaches us, the Talmud says, that Hashem said, you guys are singing Shira, Az Yashir Moshe, and my creations are drowning in the Yam Suf. In other words, if they are drowning, it's obviously my decision. But to sing a song, obviously they were not. the main song was that they had been saved. But the fact is that if a human being is being punished, and listen to this, we're talking about the Egyptians who put us through hell for over 90 years. We were in Mitzrayim for 210 years. And nevertheless, HaKadosh Baruch Hu calls them Ma'aseh Yadai. I created them. They are my creations. When Avraham Avinu opened up his first Bet Chabad in the middle of the desert, and his big tent had openings on all four sides, he wanted every single human being to know Hashem's existence and to thank Hashem and to bless Hashem. That's why Hashem called him Avraham with a hey. Ki av hamon goyim netaticha. I have made you the father of all of the nations. We know when the Torah says in Parashat Kedoshim, B'pnei sevatakum, we have to rise in front of someone who is over 70. The Talmud tells us, even someone who's a Gentile. And this person, definitely over his life, he experienced Hashgacha Pratit. He definitely saw the hand of Hashem throughout his lifetime. So we have to respect him. We have to stand up when he walks in. We know that throughout the month of Sukkot, which is coming up in a few weeks, the Talmud tells us that if nations of the world would know how many korbanot, how many offerings we brought in the Beit HaMikdash, benefit, they would never have destroyed the Beit HaMikdash, and they would never hate us, because they would realize how thankful they have to be that because of us that they are around, and they have all their blessing because of us. So this is, on one hand, we have the fact that Ha'adam, Hashem created all of mankind in his image. On the other hand, we know that Am Yisroel, we are the chosen nation. As we have in countless verses on how important Hashem is. As it says in the verse, B'cha b'char Hashem Elokecha. Hashem chose you, liyot lo la'am segula, to be a treasured nation. Like we talked about last week in the special video, pre-Shabbos video that we sent out for Parashat Kitavo. By the way, there's a big one coming out now for Rosh Hashanah this week, B'ezrat Hashem. So we understand that the Torah expects of us to make a separation, some kind of separation, and recognition between Am Yisrael and the nations of the world. As Sarah Imenu, Sarah, our matriarch, said quite clearly that there needs to be a difference between Yitzchak and Yishmael. The separation between Am Yisrael and the nations is not just a theoretical one, but there are a number of halachot that come into play as a result of the fact that we're not allowed to mix with the nations of the world. For example, we're not allowed to marry the nations of the world. There are special halachot of milk that has to be milked by a Jew. Of course, other mitzvot like baking, cooking, wine is not allowed to be touched or poured by a Gentile. The main reason for all of these is in order that we should not marry the nations of the world. It says clearly in the Torah, "V'lo titchaten bam, bitcha lo titen livno, ubito lo tikach livnecha." And the Chachamim have added different mitzvahs of, like we said earlier, how there should definitely be some kind of separation between. There's no question that we are the chosen nation. And the chosen nation needs to be treated in a very special way. So the question is, how are we supposed to view the balance between point number 1 that we spoke about and point number 2. Or phase 1 of the Mishnah and the rest of Mishnah Yud Daled. How are we supposed to view this? So, in order to explain, let's begin with a story. I tell a story that when the Rebbe Rashav, Rabbi Shalom Dov Ber, the 5th Rebbe of Chabad, was a small child, he was playing with his older brother, which I believe was 2 years older than him. He was called the Razah, which is an abbreviation for Reb Zalman Aaron. And they had a competition. I think one was 5 and one was 7. Who was taller? And it's known that the Rebbe Rashav was very tall, and the Razah was shorter than him. By the way, it's told that the Rebbe Rashav's wife, Shterna Sarah, she was very short. So apparently he was very tall and she was very short. And it says that this is parenthetically that she felt a little bit, I'm not sure what the word is, a little bit down or less. I guess she was short and he was so tall. So so the Tzemach Tzedek, who was the Rebbe Rashav's grandfather, he told her that great things come in small packages. I'm not sure the exact words that he said, but I saw this myself in order to encourage her, and I'm sure he didn't just say it to make her feel good, but I sort of like that line. Okay, so the Razah wanted to show that he's taller than his brother, Rabbi Shalom Dov Ber. So they were playing, I guess, I don't know, in some park or some yard, or maybe in the backyard of where they lived, and there was a little bit of a hole in the ground. So the Razah said to his younger brother, Rabbi Rashab, you stand lower in that little pit, and I'll stand on the regular ground, and I'll be taller than you. And so their father, the Rebbe Maharash, saw this episode. He called them both in, and he said to the Razah, he said, if you want to show how high you are, don't put someone else down. Work hard to lift yourself up. Earn that benefit. Take a chair and stand up on the chair. Or in more of a quality level, we talk about God forbid putting someone else down. God forbid saying to someone in public or in private, making them feel like a piece of garbage. That's not the way to build your own self-confidence. That's not the right way to lift yourself up. And this is what Rabbi Akiva is trying to convey to us. Rabbi Akiva's message is that which one's better? A Jew, a Gentile? D, all of the above. When we're talking about human beings, we have to respect every single human being, every single person that Hashem created. In fact, every single object, every single animal, it's all Maaseh Yidei Hashem. They're all created by Hashem. And therefore, we have to respect every person. Then we say, the Torah says, that you should realize that you are the chosen nation. Am HaNivchar. Aha, Am HaNivchar. So some people will say, Oive, Am HaNivchar, that means that we have to put other people down, God forbid, and we have to show them who they are. No, Chas v'Shalom. That is not the meaning of being the chosen nation. The chosen nation doesn't mean putting up a banner on your home, putting down other nations or other people or other races. Being the chosen nation means that you realize that you have certain mitzvahs, that we have certain responsibilities. It's not only the flowery the flowery compliment and stance that we have, that we're able to be higher, quote unquote, than anyone else. No. It means that it's a special zechut, it's a true merit, being born to a Jewish mom, or to going to doing halachic conversion. That is a zechut which is unparalleled. But at the same time, it's being an or lagoyim. It's being a light unto the nations. Being able to share with the nations that we come in contact with respect and their 7 Noahide laws, bring the world bracha. And that's not a contradiction with the fact that we have special mitzvahs and we have special restrictions that we're not allowed to do with Gentiles. For example, Chalav Yisroel, milk needs to be milked by a Jewish person. Bishul Akum, we're not allowed, a Gentile is not allowed to cook for us, not allowed to bake for us, not allowed to touch our wine. It's not a negative thing. It's not an impurity. It's simply a restriction that our chachamim, our sages, placed upon us, and we have to follow along those laws. And it's a good thing. Why is it a good thing? When we say in the Havdalah, we say, Hamavdil ben Kodesh L'cho, Hashem is the one who separates between holiness and mundane, and the mundane. Ben Yisroel Amim, between Am Yisrael and the nations. Ben Yom HaShvi L'Sheshet Yemei HaMaaseh, between the holy day of Shabbat and the 6 days of work. It's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. Once we realize our own place and we don't mix things which we're not supposed to mix, then we can meet each other and we can have the proper respect. Once we have the boundaries, then we can have our respect. But the first, there has to be each one understanding its boundaries. How is that? Rabbi Akiva says, Shenitan lahem kli chemda, because Am Yisrael is a Torah. When we follow the Torah is a guide for us to be able to realize and understand our specialty, and at the same time, God forbid, not to put anyone else down. I'd like to finish off with a very interesting story. When the Rebbe would go back home from 770 to his home on President Street on Shabbos, he would go by a shul of the Chassidim. You know, Crown Heights, especially in those days, but also today, has different shuls. So they would wait for the Rebbe every Shabbos, and the Rebbe would make like this with his head, as if to say Good Shabbos or Shalom. One Shabbos, they waited out for the Rebbe. I guess they were on, their shul was probably on Brooklyn Avenue, maybe on President Street. It was probably on Brooklyn Avenue. And they saw that the Rebbe walked by a Gentile police and spoke to him for a few minutes. And there were some that were offended by the fact that to the Gentile police, the Rebbe spoke for a couple of minutes. And when he came to them, when he walked by their shul, he only did this. When they asked the Rebbe responded the following thing. I never shook my head in front of a Gentile. What did the Rebbe mean to say? The exact point of Rabbi Akiva of this Mishna. I have respect for everyone. And to speak, if someone needs my help, I'm there for everyone, even Gentiles. But you'll never see me do this, where basically a person puts down their head and shows that they have subservience to the Gentile. That we only have subservience to Hashem, only to another Jew. And that is the way the Torah teaches us. So in other words, we learned today, first the Mishnah Yud Gimel, but a number of things which keep us, which is connected to Yud Dalid. It keeps us Am Yisrael, the Am HaNivchar, the chosen nation. But at the same time, Rabbi Akiva teaches us how we can balance the two, and we can keep our utmost respect for every human being in the world. Yesher Koach, Shalom Shalom. Tonight will be the final class for the Tuesday night class before the Chagim, and then we'll continue after the Chagim. I look forward to seeing you in person. Bezrat Hashem, we're going to finish the Alter Rebbe's letter, Perek Chavav, chapter 26, and of course, tomorrow morning, Bezrat Hashem, right here. And we look forward to seeing everybody this Shabbat throughout the Chagim. And today is another opportunity, if you did not yet contribute on the website for bringingjerusalem-to-the-world.com, today would be a great opportunity to contribute and to help us distribute hundreds of meals to needy families. Bezrat Hashem, this Sunday, fresh meals, full meals, 4 meals which we're giving every family, Bezrat Hashem, every person. So please be part of this special campaign. Toda Rabbah, all the best. And of course, if you want to help us volunteer on Sunday, that would be a huge mitzvah. All the best. Shalom, shalom, and have a wonderful day.